This might be the worst take in the history of the USA Today. And no, I'm not kidding about that.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, the most watched Ole Miss podcast out there. I'm your host, Steven Willis, a 10-year veteran member of the national media with Yahoo Sports and a former Ole Miss staff member as well. We're proud to be part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Now it is the number one sports podcast network in America because of fans like you taking in content like this. Thank you very much for that. On today's show, we're breaking down the elite defensive line work that Ole Miss did in the transfer portal this year and how the Rebels look poised to replace Xavion Harris. On paper, well, they absolutely did. Then we'll look at the defensive line room as a whole that was already stacked, led by William Echoles, the Sugar Bowl defensive MVP. This is a position that Ole Miss is built to dominate with, but the real question is, how do you maximize the talent this season? But first, we're going to address some of the noise that came out following the Trinidad Chambliss decision, including some wildly over-the-top reactions. Apparently, a medical redshirt, according to Matt Hayes of the USA Today, has triggered a full-blown doomsday scenario in his mind. We'll take the fact and separate it from the hysteria. All of that and more on today's Locked On Ole Miss podcast. Remember, we're free and available on all the podcast apps and YouTube, and a special hello to the insiders and everydayers who make the show what it is. Your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Use the profit boost on an NBA future and get an entered for a chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, so Matt Hayes from the USA Today wrote an article, a column, essentially an opinion piece. And listen, everybody knows the opinions that go around. Heck, we do it on this show. Everybody does it. Everybody has opinions. But whenever you drift off into lazy, I'm going to have a problem with it. And when you use Trinidad because of how good he is, I'm going to have a problem with that. And whenever you, I guess, pick on the Deep South, I'm going to have a problem with that. It just guaranteed that's going to happen. And Matt Hayes basically hit the trifecta on that in an article he wrote for the USA Today over, I guess, over the weekend maybe. So Matt Hayes, which his name is on all of these because I definitely want him to get credit for this. So he says, so now the fan, that's how he starts the article. So now the fan, I mean the judge, has 8 words at the beginning of his lead. That's going to set the tone for this whole thing. So in the Trinidad Chambliss case, wants the NCAA to explain why they walked out of the courtroom before he wept while reading his soliloquy of the poor, mistreated college football player. This is one of the most biased leads I have ever seen. Listen, if you think that you're dealing with a shade tree judge and you have plans to appeal any case, if that is your goal, you do not tick off the law-abiding judge to what's going on, because that's a part of the record now as well going up to the appeal. And you're going to have to explain yourself to the Mississippi Supreme Court, because that's the next step. The Mississippi Supreme Court, to where they choose whether or not they hear something or not, and you're going to go into it with this. You already had a case where you had no evidence, they called no witnesses, and you left after about 80% of the case. You want to talk about mistreated college football player? Yes, the NCAA admitting that they were not going to win this case. And it wasn't because of a shade tree judge. It was because of the facts being on Trinidad's side. I told people all the time that in this Trinidad Chambliss case, this wasn't a Diego Pavia thing. They weren't trying to make D2 not count. They weren't trying to just get it eligibility. This isn't him going for the 7th, 8th, or 9th year of eligibility that the NCAA has been handing out like candy. This is for a 6th year, a standard 6th year that the NCAA has done for 50 years. And they chose to make Trinidad Chambliss a part of this because they thought, honestly, yeah, and you can't convince me otherwise, they thought they were going to lose the Charles Bediako case and the Joey Aguiar case. They thought those cases were going to be L's. When they weren't, they had to pivot for what they were going to do. And this scheduled tweet essentially happened. They had to use one case that they lost, and they picked Trinidad Chambliss because he gets eyeballs. So they made fun of the deep rural South, in which case to where Chancery Court judges, the case is heard wherever the rotation is in that thing. There's one judge for about 9 counties, and that just happened to fall on Pittsburgh. It could have been just as easily been in South Haven. It could have easily been in Tupelo. It's not a shade tree thing to where Ole Miss filed in Pittsburgh. It's just where the Chancery Court was at that particular time. So he went on to talk about how the NCAA needs to go completely all in on appealing this. And this is him not realizing what the appeals process actually is. He didn't take 5 seconds to put something in ChatGPT or the internet to find out what the appeal process would be in this case. He just thought, hey, appeal, let's do it. No research whatsoever. And he's like, okay, let's say that the NCAA does that. And Ole Miss rightfully loses their appeal, which they would not do because Trinidad won on merits of the case, not because of who the judge was. But I digress. If Ole Miss lost the appeal, what's going to stop them from just playing him anyway? Surely the SEC, the mean old SEC, would step in and make Ole Miss forfeit all the games that Trinidad Chambliss took part in, and took the opportunities away from some random unnamed 17-year-old. And he said, well, what if the SEC is just in favor of Ole Miss? Maybe they're just a, I don't know, rogue conference and they want to break away. And then he started talking about what the crux of his actual article was. Once again, he used Trinidad Chambliss to get to this point, but his actual article was the SEC could use this to create a competition all by themselves. No Big Ten, no anybody else, just 16 teams in the Southeastern Conference with the major media partner in ESPN going through with a 12-game SEC schedule into a college football playoff, essentially, of SEC teams as well, doing their own thing. My man took a medical hardship redshirt and turned it into 1 minute to midnight from a doomsday scenario of the SEC breaking away from the NCAA. If that doesn't tell you this wasn't a plant from Indianapolis doing the work that Dan Wolken used to do for them, now this guy is doing something to kind of peddle their message, their propaganda, I don't know what will. The reality of this situation, if you want to go back and look at the Trinidad situation, the only people that are upset in any way about Trinidad Chambliss getting an extra year of eligibility is on Ole Miss's schedule next year, period, because their chance of winning the game plummeted when Trinidad got his eligibility. When Ole Miss became a legitimate national championship contender, their chance of winning the game plummeted. That's the reason fans of Georgia completely crashed out after that. That's the reason fans of LSU are freaking out at the moment. They realized their chance of winning a football game went way down. So what is Matt Hayes' motivation? I understand the access with the NCAA. I get that. But what is his motivation? If we use my standard for the people that spoke out against Trinidad Chambliss getting a year of eligibility and what that could mean, what would Matt Hayes do? Well, I decided to look him up on LinkedIn to find out where he went to college. And guess what? He is a proud member of the University of Florida Journalism School. If you look at the schedule, Ole Miss plays Florida, I think, on September 26th. And it's going to be a difficult thing. The game's in the swamp. It's hard to win in the swamp, but it became a lot easier to win in the swamp with Trinidad Chambliss, and he is going to take those steps. You cannot be lazy. You cannot just carry water and propaganda. You cannot do any of this stuff whenever opinion pieces come out. It just means that your opinion's for sale, man. That's all that means. That means that you can be bought. And pieces like this kind of makes people wonder if that's the case, because that article was lazy. It didn't make sense. It didn't understand the process that was in front of Trinidad in this appeals situation. And it went to a 1 + 1 = 7 scenario, saying a standard thing that the NCAA has done for 50 years is going to be the catastrophic thing that causes the NCAA to dissolve. It's dishonest. It's honestly, it just wasn't good. So that's something you probably need to work on, buddy. So we'll talk to you later about that. Ever wanted to experience the NBA Finals live and in person? FanDuel is giving you a chance to turn that dream into a reality with their NBA sweepstakes. Here is how it works. Use your profit boost on any NBA future, and you'll be automatically entered for a shot to win a trip to the NBA Finals for two. That's right. Flights, tickets, the whole experience. And if you're already looking at the board, thinking about which team can make a deep run, this is the perfect time to lock it in. I love futures this time of year. Whether it's picking a team to win the championship or grab the conference title, it adds that extra layer of excitement to every game down the stretch. And now, not only can you pick cash, but you can also make it to where you get sent to the NBA Finals. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Use your profit boost on NBA futures to get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on about your day. With TurboTax full service, you can have your taxes done by a trusted local expert start to finish without the stress or the guesswork. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or connect online. They handle everything from W-2s to self-employment forms and work to get you the best deduction. You can upload your documents, go on about your day, and get updates right inside the TurboTax app. It's a huge time saver, and it gives you a real peace of mind knowing an expert is handling it. For a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a TurboTax expert for just $150 all in. If a TurboTax expert didn't file your return last year, just file by February 28th. That's coming up pretty quick, guys. Take taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit TurboTax.com/local to book your appointment today. Hey, do us a favor, like, subscribe, and comment on the video. Subscribe to the podcast on whichever audio podcast you're listening to, and give it a 5-star review. It costs nothing, but it keeps all of this free. Thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen of the day, and thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast in America. If you haven't already, go check out our new Everydayer Club. Access to an ad-free audio feed for Locked On Ole Miss, compatible with Apple and Spotify and every major podcasting app. You'll get an invite to a members-only Discord everyday Discord server, which includes a group chat just for listeners of this show. I'm there from time to time as well. And you'll get special access to episodes of Locked On Ole Miss. Corey Burton, Dalen Flowers, Mike Huseman. That's where you see those guys on the channel. So go to lockedonolemiss.supercast.com or tap the link down in the show notes to learn more. All right, so Ole Miss, we went over the defensive end, the edge players yesterday. Let's talk about the 3 techniques and the 0 techniques. Sometimes those 3 techniques become 5 techniques, but I digress. Cam Franklin's going to be the strong side defensive end, and then like William Echoles will be on the other side. That's the odd front for Ole Miss. But it's essentially two players, two positions that you have to fill for. And when you look at what Ole Miss has, it's pretty good at the moment. The returners that Ole Miss had coming back this season, they had Andrew Maddox, who was a true freshman a year ago that started to get more playing time as the season went on, and he's going to be a really good player for Ole Miss. Will Echoles was the Sugar Bowl defensive MVP. He is somebody that has a chance to have a Walter Nolan type impact on the 2026 defense. Everybody knows Jam Brown. He just makes plays, and he consistently does it. He's somebody that has a chance to be really good. And then there's Cameron Beavers, who was a part of that much ballyhooed defensive line class from a couple of years ago. He hasn't got on the field yet, but feels like he's getting close. But Ole Miss has 4 players for essentially 2 positions. That's the point that I talked about earlier. So that's a 2 deep in place already, but you're trying to replace Xavion Harris. You're trying to get as much depth as you can get. Now, signing-wise, Ole Miss got Jamarian Owens, who was the 3A Defensive Player of the Year in the state of Mississippi. Signee-wise, Jaden Curtis, who I think went to St. Martin down on the coast, and then there's Carmelo Reed from Illinois signed as well. I do not think any of the true freshman signees are in line to play. Now, if you go out in spring practice, if you go out in fall practice and you make plays, you can absolutely end up on the field. Whenever you deal with a Jamarian Owens, you have to at least think about like what got Isaac Gross on the field. Jamarian Owens can do as well, and that's that lightning fast get off that he has. I mean, that could be a possibility to get him on the field, but I just don't think that a true freshman is going to play whenever you look at what's ahead of him in the defensive tackle positions of Andrew Maddox, Will Echoles, Jam Brown, and Cam Beavers of returners. And that's not even including the transfer portal. We're going to get into that in just a second. But whenever you have Will Echoles, you need to try and figure out how to maximize Will Echoles. He's going to be a guaranteed double team on every single play. You can count on Will Echoles getting the double team. The question becomes, can the other person demand one as well? And at that point, all of the stuff that we talked about on the edge, the Blake Purchase, the Cam Franklin, all that, it's a one-on-one against a tight end or a running back or something like that. All of a sudden, you have a chance to make a lot of hay and give the quarterback a lot less time to throw the football, which is what Pete Golding made his bones on. He has been an expert of scheming up ways to get defensive ends sack numbers, explosive plays. He is a highly explosive defensive coach. And part of that has to do with the secret sauce, but part of it has to do with the way he's wired. If you go back to his days at UTSA, Pete Golding, he got Marcus Davenport, who ended up going to the New Orleans Saints and get drafted in the first round, got him numbers as a defensive end. So it's in his DNA. And the one thing that I think that Ole Miss had to do this year to maximize that defensive line is a year ago, they could not play man coverage. Not consistently, not when the defense knew it was coming. They just didn't have the athletes to match up with what's going on. So this is what Pete Golding and the Ole Miss Rebels and Walker Jones and all those guys did in the early part of the transfer portal. If you remember, like the first 9 players that got signed were defensive players. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that they understood the assignment. They knew what was going on. Against Georgia and against Miami, they got bullied on the defensive line because they had to drop back and play zone defense, which put people, linebacker and everything else, on the heel because you have to get back to a zone. And when they played man coverage, there was a buzz. There was something that was happening to where the other team was allowed to move the ball pretty consistently. So this year they picked up Jay Crawford. Jay Crawford, best cornerback in the portal for my liking. He is going to Trey Amos one half of the field. He is going to tilt things in your favor. It allows you to take your best cornerback and move him over to the number 2 or number 3 wide receivers, which is going to theoretically make your defense better. And then in the back end of it, you have Edwin Joseph, you have Janelle Aguero, you get Ladarian Clardy, Keon Young. Those guys in the back end of that defense, they have a chance to be pretty good. And that gives you the flexibility, at least theoretically, to be more aggressive on the front. And if you are more aggressive on the front, all of a sudden the defense looks more like 2024 than 2025. We were told before last season that the front 7 in this defense, the standards there is just like the 24 team, but the standard doesn't change. And everybody said after the Georgia game, I was like, oh, it's not quite that standard, right? We were kind of lied to. And then as it went on, it's like, oh my gosh, they're covering for that secondary. That secondary was all of the problem defensively. And it basically, you had to sacrifice part of your run defense to kind of make up for the pass defense problems that they could have. Really, really interesting stuff. We'll see how it goes. But when you look at it, Ole Miss is in a very, very good spot for what they could be. Anyway, the Rebels made 2 major moves at zero technique as well in the transfer portal, and it is clear that they're building a defensive line monster. All that's coming up next. This is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast.
I'm Clea Butler, host of Locked On Women's Basketball, and this is Mazda's Women's Basketball Snapshot, celebrating the work no highlight reel can ever capture. It was a heavyweight showdown between number 3 South Carolina and number 7 LSU, and the Gamecocks rose to the occasion. South Carolina secured a hard-fought 79-72 victory to stay atop the SEC standings, using a balanced offensive attack to outlast the Tigers. Tessa Johnson led the way with 21 points, while Raven Johnson added 19. Medina Okot dominated the paint with a double-double, finishing with 12 points and 17 rebounds, while Joyce Edwards chipped in 10 points to round out the scoring. With the statement win, the Gamecocks now turn their attention to a road matchup at number 23 Alabama on Thursday. These moments are earned off the clock, those long before the lights ever come on. The sweat, the fakes, the doubt, the scrapes, and coming back for more every time. Mazda puts that same drive into every detail. Wins define the moment, putting in the work, that defines you. There's more to a Mazda because there's more to you.
Workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, inboxes overflowing, and the one position you have to fill, well, that is still sitting open. When the pressure's on and you need to make the right hire, this is the job for Sponsored Jobs. Indeed, Sponsored Jobs helps you reach people who actually fit what you're looking for, either skills, experience, or location, so you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours have made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. Spend less time searching, more time interviewing candidates who check all of your boxes. Less stress, less time, more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. And listeners to this show will get $75 in sponsored job credit to help you get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard it here about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? Well, this is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. All right, so in the transfer portal, we talked about the defensive lineman that Ole Miss has currently and who they got in the signing class this year. They got a couple players in the transfer portal that kind of stand out to me. The first one they got was Makai Boireau. If I butchered that name, I apologize. But Makai Boro is a defensive lineman, a massive human being, a true zero technique. You think of Mount Cody or anything like that in the middle of the field, they can work playing a zero technique lining up on the center. Him and Jaheim Otis, like the prophecy has finally been fulfilled with Jaheim Otis coming back to Ole Miss. Boro is somebody that Brian Smith, the Florida football scout, when he saw what was going on, he's like, Ole Miss is spending this class because zero techniques are not cheap. Even if you haven't heard from them, you know, everybody is looking for a rush end or a quarterback or something like that, but a zero technique, not cheap, but you might not have heard from them. Ole Miss signed 2. With Boro, they get a little bit of physicality in their game. What's going on? They're going to hopefully line him up next to William Echoles, or Jaheim Otis lining up next to William Echoles. That'll be absolutely huge. Just massive people in the middle of the defense designed to basically force you to double team them. They're good enough to where you get forced to double team them. And if you do that, and they're going to have to double team William Echoles, we've talked about it over and over again, all of a sudden Blake Purchase and Cam Franklin, they're dealing with single coverage, and they can get after the quarterback with impunity. This isn't hard. 2 really good zero techniques designed to replace Xavion Harris, which I think they did replace 1 for 1, or actually 2 for 1, Xavion Harris. I think Ole Miss has a chance to be really good on the defensive line because of what I have explained over the last 10 or 15 minutes or so. Should be interesting. We started this podcast talking about the horrible take out of the USA Today over the weekend, blaming Trinidad Chambliss for a possibly SEC breakaway from the NCAA. Obvious propaganda, obvious clickbait. It has the NCAA, SEC, and of course Trinidad Chambliss in there as well. Throw it all in there and see what can happen as well. So thank you for tuning in today. We will continue to talk about spring football, baseball, all of that stuff all over the course of the week. We are so follow and subscribe so you get all of the latest episodes as well. We're on all the social channels, so check that out. If you never miss an episode, the Everydayer Club is built for you. Get Locked On Ole Miss ad-free, plus members-only Discord access and more. Head to lockedonolemist.supercast.com to join the club. For those of you on video, we will send you to the first ever 24/7 National Locked On Podcast Network YouTube channel. And audio, make sure you get your second listen with Locked On College Football or Locked On SEC. They both do an excellent job. Baseball game, all of that coming up. Big stuff with Chad Smith tonight on the show. Hotty toddy, everybody. We will talk to you later.